There's lots happening overseas this morning. We're waiting for that make or break press conference from Joe Biden at the NATO summit. But before we get there, a major manhunt is happening in the Philippines this morning as harrowing details emerge about the deaths of 3 people, including an Australian couple.
CCTV footage has been released of the suspected killer entering a hotel room where the 3 victims were found. The ABC's Southeast Asia correspondent, Lauren Day, is on the scene for us.
Well, I'm standing outside the funeral parlour where the bodies of these 3 victims who were killed in such tragic circumstances have been taken as police try to piece together exactly what has happened here. And what's emerging is a very harrowing picture indeed. On Wednesday, a staff member from the Lake Hotel in Tagaytay entered their room to remind them that it was time to check out, and he found 57-year-old Australian David James Fisk, his wife Lucida Cortez and her daughter-in-law Mary Jane Cortez all lifeless and face down on the floor. They were apparently bound around their wrists and ankles with electrical cables and shoelaces and gagged with packing tape over their mouths. Now, police are reviewing CCTV from the hotel and particularly trying to identify a suspect who was seen leaving their room on Wednesday wearing a hoodie, sneakers, shorts and a backpack. It's unclear what the motive could have been here, and apparently some valuable items like mobile phones were left in the room, so no doubt that will form a big part of the investigation here. Meanwhile, the local mayor has expressed his sorrow and offered his apologies and condolences to the families of the victims.
We will try our very best to resolve this early. No? We're very sorry to our Australian friends.
Now, DFAT is not saying a lot at this stage other than to confirm that they are offering consular assistance to the families of 2 Australians who have died in the Philippines. And no doubt those families will be desperate for answers about how and why this has happened to their loved ones.
Lauren Day there. Well, all eyes are on US President Joe Biden's high-stakes media conference later this morning. Actually, it's supposed to start in about an hour and a half once the NATO summit wraps up in Washington. It will be Mr Biden's first solo media conference in 8 months, and it comes as pressure continues to mount on him to quit the presidential race. We're joined by Michael, who's outside the White House, and our North America Bureau Chief, Jade McMillan, who is at that NATO summit in Washington. Good morning to both of you. Michael, can I kick off with you, because this debate is, when they talk about, the press conference, I'm sorry, when they talk about something being high stakes, this has surely got to be it.
100%, Lisa. Good morning to you and good morning, Bridge. The President has repeatedly clapped back whenever he's been criticised over his age and mental acuity, and of course he's copped a lot of criticism on both of those fronts since that dismal debate performance. He has come back with the words, "Watch me." Well, America, the world will be watching this media conference in less than 90 minutes' time. But most importantly, his biggest and most critical audience will be members of the Democratic Party, particularly those not too far from me here on Capitol Hill. But in the words of one senior Democrat quoted by the Axios newsletter this afternoon, even if Joe Biden was to drop to the floor of the NATO stage and do push-ups, the damage, in this senior Democrat's view, has already been done care of that debate performance. So a lot at stake. The President's every word, how he handles questions, even how he walks onto the stage and off the stage will be monitored, because the pressure on him to step down from the race, Lisa, has increased exponentially in the last 24 hours. There was a bit of a lull. The White House was fighting back, but in the last 24 hours, more senior Democrats, both senators now and also members of the lower house, have come out calling on Joe Biden to step down. We had a very influential Washington Post American ABC poll out today showing that 2/3 of those surveyed do want Joe Biden to step down. And more worryingly for the President, more than 50% of Democrats surveyed believe Joe Biden wasn't up to serving a second term and therefore should step down as well. And as you would have seen as well, another Hollywood heavyweight has come out and called for Joe Biden to quit. Michael Douglas, hot on the heels of George Clooney, has come out and says he doesn't believe Joe Biden is up for another term. Like George Clooney, Michael Douglas, a very influential person within Democratic Party circles, importantly, a fundraiser. And all this comes as numerous reports emerge in the city of donations starting to dry up from big donors and small. And as you well know, Lisa, money is the lifeblood of politics in the city. No money, no campaign. So lots at stake as Joe Biden prepares to front the media, including our very own Barbara Miller. Hopefully she gets a question in at that NATO headquarters in less than 90 minutes' time.
Yeah, OK. It's definitely overshadowed the NATO summit, hasn't it? But there were big decisions made there. And Jade, a decision from Australia and the Deputy Prime Minister, Richard Marles, who was there.
Yeah, good morning, Lisa. Richard Marles says that this is Australia's largest single contribution to Ukraine since Russia's invasion began. It's nearly $250 million worth of air defence missiles, guided weapons and boots for Ukrainian soldiers. The Deputy PM is here in Washington representing Australia as an Indo-Pacific partner of the NATO alliance, and he and other Indo-Pacific representatives met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky here earlier. Richard Marles said that he was grateful for this contribution and also for an ongoing commitment from Australia that this won't be the last of the support provided, that it will continue to come for as long as it takes. Richard Marles arguing that what happens in Ukraine is relevant to our own region because of the message it sends, the lessons that are learned, particularly because of Russia's close relationship with China. And he said that Australia backed a rebuke from NATO members when they said that Beijing was a decisive enabler of Russia. So while the uncertainty over Joe Biden's political future is, of course, at least partially overshadowing this summit, the conflict in Ukraine and the path forward from here is sharply in focus as well.
Richard Marles had some time apparently with the President, Joe Biden. Did he weigh into the debate about his fitness?
Well, Richard Marles is in the pretty unique position of being part of a relatively small group of people who is coming up close to the US president at this moment of extreme pressure for Joe Biden. There was a dinner at the White House last night that the Deputy Prime Minister attended, and Joe Biden also stopped by briefly, a member of those Indo-Pacific partners, at the summit earlier today. I asked Richard Marles what his impressions of Joe Biden were in those meetings and whether he had any concerns about the president's capacity to do the job. Here's some of what he said.
I don't, but I'm also not about to comment on domestic matters here in the United States. We work really closely with the Biden administration, and we've worked very closely with President Biden himself, and we're very happy with that.
So a fairly diplomatic answer, as you might expect there from the Deputy Prime Minister, but it is impossible to escape, Lisa, in this room, across the United States more broadly, this ongoing speculation over Joe Biden's future. A lot of people really closely watching that press conference in just a couple of hours' time.
In fact, 1 hour and 20 minutes at this stage, unless it gets pushed back again. Michael and Jade, thank you.
Well, back home, a gathering has been held in Western Sydney overnight, paying tribute to the 3 children who were killed in a house fire at Lalor Park. The 28-year-old father of the boys, aged 2 and 6, and a 5-month-old girl, has been charged with 3 counts of murder and 5 counts of attempted domestic violence murder.
Government efforts to save Australia's embattled nickel industry appear to have failed as one of the country's biggest producers announces it is shutting down for the next few years. Mining giant BHP has made the call to suspend its West Australian nickel operations in a matter of months, putting at least 1,600 frontline jobs in doubt. In a statement, Federal Minister for Resources Madeleine King describes it as a disappointing decision that reflects the extreme volatility of global nickel markets.
Board members of Greyhound Racing New South Wales have until the end of today to convince the state government they should remain in their roles. The deadline for the show cause notice comes as former Law Enforcement Integrity Commissioner Lee Drake is appointed to investigate allegations of barbaric treatment of dogs in the industry. Greyhound Racing New South Wales has welcomed the move and says it's still conducting its own inquiries into the issues raised.
A man has died following reports of a stabbing in Melbourne's north. Emergency services were called to a property in Thomastown around 20 to 9 last night, but the man couldn't be revived. The homicide squad is investigating. No arrests have been made.
The nearly complete fossilised remains of a 161 million-year-old arthritic Stegosaurus will be auctioned in New York next week. The dinosaur that Sotheby's has named Apex is 3.3 metres tall and 8.2 metres long and was discovered in Colorado in 2022. Apex is expected to sell for as much as $8.9 million. If I could find $8.9 million, I know two little boys that would love to have a fossilised Stegosaurus in my home.
And then another $10 million to get a home that can fit it. I mean, it's complications.
It could go in the shed, couldn't it? Anyway, we'll see.